Good morning, you guys. A quick update on multiple offer situation and why they are so amazing. First of all, bragging rights for your listing agent. I personally love a multiple offer situation. Just makes me feel good, makes me feel like I got my act together as an agent for my sellers. But also, first of all, we're keeping holding costs down. The seller, like especially when you have expensive properties, taxes can easily be $1,000, $2,000 a month. You have insurance. Insurance goes up once the property is vacant. You should tell your insurance, by the way, when your property is listed and not occupied, because there's a high risk of people going in and vandalize. That is awful. But also there's a high risk of squatters. This is not me creating a panic. I myself had squatters. I myself have seen listings that were vandalized. Not my own listings, thanks God. And I create multiple offer situation on 95% of my properties and move them quickly. But third, also, you don't want to have a property vacant because your listing agent, or me hopefully, is more successful for you when you have a multiple offer situation. Imagine like on an auction, you have one person coming to an auction because your property is overpriced. You're already 4 weeks, 8 weeks on the market. After 2 weeks, we consider a listing stale. After 4 weeks, we consider a listing dead. I last year had one listing. It was on the market 18 days. I was on the level of freaked out. I already had my coach give me all the secret tricks that we haven't used in years, and I've done all of them. And day 18, we executed. Praise God. So that was very, very long for me. There are many other agents. They have zero issues with having you listed 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks on the market, and they will tell you, oh, it's just the market. No, that is not true. The magic of having a property priced right and listed right, and it's not rocket science. When we have a listing presentation, I share all my tricks with you. Have you listed right to create a multiple offer situation, because an auction, let's say one person comes to an auction or 100 people come to an auction. Guess which auction gets you the highest price? And what we do in real estate is basically an auction. We have one item, and now it is my job to get all of the buyers out of the woodwork, and it is the seller and me working together. I explain the market, I show all the numbers, and then I explain how that works. I have several properties in my immediate neighborhood that are not moving, and when one buyer, let's say I bring the buyer for that property and I write up an offer, I know already when I write the offer, we have no competition. Week 4, week 6, it's not that there are 2-3 other buyers that we are competing with. Guess what? My offer will be lower. And also during inspection, whatever comes up, you will complain about it in the name of my buyer. In that moment, my fiduciary duty is to get the price down and keep my buyers money in their pocket. Recently, I had a situation. The property was back on the market 3 times. Very unfortunate. We have in this market about 25% of listing falling through because the buyer gets cold feet, or the buyer believes the next house will be better. Maybe we should wait, or actually a better property comes on the market and they terminate the current, and there are ways always how to terminate, and we just move on and buy the next property. So guess what? Your listing pops back on the market. Often there are ways to avoid it. For example, I always try, that is also the benefit of a multiple offer situation. Me as a listing agent, I can create backup buyers. So I always create situations where I have 2-3 people in the pipeline that want to fill up the gap right away in case we fall through, so the property never goes back on the market, what makes it every time more stigmatized. And in this case, I brought the buyer on the property that was already back on the market 3 times. Guess what? My job is to take advantage of that and tell my buyer, like, hey, maybe you don't want to offer full asking. Maybe you want to come in lower. And then we do an inspection and we find things that are not 100%. And guess what? We say, hey, we would like to have a discount of XYZ amount for that. And the listing agent will say, yes, ma'am, thank you very much. We will do whatever you want, but please see the closing table with us. So there are certain ways how to brag with our buyers and to put them in a very successful position from the get-go. And then also have an agent making it a win-win situation, saying, look, this is our offer price, but we are very solid on the buyer's side, and I represent a very solid buyer, but this is our amount, and we are only offering XYZ. And very recently, that buyer got 45K equity, so much equity that a lender that never waives the appraisal, that lender said, you know, you're right, Julia, we don't need an appraisal. We are like running, even as a lender, the comps just on paper, we have so much equity, we don't need an appraisal. And there the buyer saved, again, $500, $600 just for the appraisal. So that is how things work out really, really sweet on the buyer side in this market. So if you're a buyer and you are financially pre-approved, you always want to be ahead of the market. There are three people that are buying. There are early, I think it's called early adopters, and then there is the big flock. All the buyers come together, and then there's multiple offer situation, and then I, as the agent, tell you you need to go 40K over asking or things like that. And then there are the late adopters, those that are always late to the party. Guess who has the most equity in their pocket on the listing, but also on the buyer side? The early adopters, the people that adopt, that understand the market, that listen, that are coachable, and listen to those people like me that do nothing else but real estate. I don't do this at the side. This is how I pay my bills, so I'm better successful for my clients. And yesterday I talked to my favorite title company, and she was like, the lady running the show said, well, your listings, at least they all see the closing table. I mean, you all bring them, almost all, except the one I just shared with you where I terminated. But that is very, very rare that I have an introduction with my clients and say, hey, let's all do the right thing at all times. And then the client, despite that, decides during the transaction to not do the right thing. That is very, very rare, because I'm very, very clear with my clients to make them successful. So that is on the buyer side, how you are successful. Work with an agent, and there is no one fits all. Every listing is different. We look at every situation. I go back in the property history. I pull up the value. I let you know if it's in a flood zone, all of those things, insurance, etc., etc. All our ducks are in a row. When you and me go out house hunting, all the work is almost already done. Okay, we only have the fun part left. So if you want to be a buyer, be an early adopter. Don't wait till all. Imagine like the, how do you say, the ducks here on the lake. The first one taking off, do you want to be that and be super successful and not pay over asking and not pay higher purchase price? Maybe you save a little bit on the interest rate, but for that you pay 40, 50, 60 over asking. Would that be a better deal for you? Or would it be a better deal for you to understand what is happening now? Interest rate is coming down. It is announced to come down multiple times during this year more. You get a free refi with my lenders. Come on, snatch up the properties right now. Do not wait. And we do have good inventory. And if you don't find it, talk to me. The person that saved 40, 45K in equity, they were looking totally other side of town. And I'm like, where do you work? Where do you want to be? This is our circle where we want to be. Let's get you into the nicer side of town. How about you look over there? And they're like, oh, this area, we cannot even afford it. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Yes, you can. And now they live in such a beautiful neighborhood, cul-de-sac, very maintained property, and hopefully there will be appreciation in for them, because if you buy in a bad neighborhood, that goes more down, or in a good neighborhood where people take care of their property and value goes up. We're not allowed to tell the future. I do not have the crystal ball, but most likely value will go up, right? So be smart about what you're buying, and also be smart about when you're buying. And a little bit of pulling the belt tighter right now and being diligent for a year or 2 or 3. Well, I don't like Dave Ramsey in everything, but with that, he's right. Live for 2-3 years on a ramen noodle budget. So after that, you broke the cycle of renting. You do not rely on a landlord. You do not rely on interest rate up and down and back and forth and what the home prices do. They will not fall down. A property that is now 400, it will most likely not go down to 200. Like, what are you waiting for? You're dreaming. The moment interest rates come down, we will have more demand. We still do not have plenty of supply because builders were slowing down because building prices were so expensive, materials were so expensive. So we are still short on the inventory side, and there is no way for builders to catch up. There is no way for multiplying on the listing side by 10 or so, that we would have more supply than we have demand. We have such a backlog on buyers. The moment interest rate comes down just a little bit, we see a spike right away. So if you want to buy, be smart and buy now. Also, I need to keep the lights on. I'm behind on my personal goals, but coming from contribution, you are not better advised, very, very likely 99% in my personal opinion, by waiting. If you want to be in your new house in summer, get started right now. Let's have a conversation. Let's get you ready. Let's do all the hard work now. Let's look at all the numbers. We have amazing new builds. We have amazing pre-owned homes, and I can guide you through and also show you. If you don't know where you're at, if you don't know what you want to do, let's talk. And my job is to narrow it down. If you have issues, if you have problems with your credit score, with your savings situations, let's look at it. You would be surprised in what kind of houses I can get you for how little money and how little monthly payment. And I can also run you the numbers. If interest rate would fall by 0.5% or by a full point, what would be a miracle? Let's run the numbers, how much your monthly payment comes down. It is not very much. So you are waiting for something, for numbers, and you did not even run your numbers. I ran your numbers, and I do this every day for a living. So let's be reasonable on the buyer side and actually compare apples to apples and not dream of something and hope for something. And my friend told me, and my uncle bought 1980. Those are not very good advisors. Let's run your numbers for your situation. And then if you don't want to move forward, you are free to stop the process at any point in time. But if you want to move forward, I would be the first one saying cheers and being so happy for you, because you will not be a winner by continuing to rent for the next 5 years. Rent only goes up, property taxes goes up, insurance goes up. Guess what? The landlord makes you pay for that as the tenant. Do you think they pay for that? No. They raise the rent on you until they cash flow again. So it will not get better on the tenant side. At one point you need to stop the cycle, bite the bullet, show me 10 or 20K in savings, be a buyer, and interrupt this cycle for yourself, but also for future generations. If you want to be a buyer and you don't know how, talk to me, 832-444-4923. I would love to help you. Bye-bye.